Rock and roll. Sam in Orange, Texas. Sam, you're on the air with Greg Palast. And me.
Hey, Tom. Greg, my brothers. First, like to thank both of you and your coworkers for the hard work you do for us lovers of democracy.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Greg, we had an incident over here in neighboring Jefferson County in southern East Texas. There was a sign on the door of the early voting poll that said, "You will need voter registration and driver's license." In Texas, currently, all you need is an approved photo ID, which obviously doesn't include state university IDs. But
right.
The clerk said it was a mistake, and now all signage has to be approved by her. And also, I had a question. Does the federal government have the authority to set standards, national standards for elections, for drawing district lines, and
what's used and how and where and all
vote, and how the votes are counted, and et cetera.
Yeah, got it. Thanks, Sam. Greg?
Thanks, Sam. Well, Sam, number one, well, here's why they're pushing people away from early voting. What's the color of the people that are showing up for early voting? And you know, it's not the pale faces. They tend to vote on Election Day. That's the demographics of America. Voters of color vote early, and because they don't get Tuesday off. And so they're discouraging early voting all over the nation. That's right. In Texas, you do need an ID, a state photo ID, which is absurd, but you need that. But now they've added something extra for the early voters. In Ohio, they're playing a wonderful little game where people coming in for early voting are not allowed, even though the machines are right next to them, they're not actually allowed to vote on the machines. They're given absentee ballot forms to fill out. And I asked a county clerk, I said, why are these people being given absentee ballot forms? They're right here. They're not absent. They're in the polling station. He said, so that they can challenge their vote after Election Day. Because you can always challenge an absentee ballot on signatures or other games that these guys play, and they remove thousands of ballots that way. So we see, and then in Georgia, Brian Kemp, who's running for governor, and he's also running the election, he closed off early voting the last Sunday before the election. He will have a rally with Donald Trump, but there will be no early voting. He's shut down Souls to the Polls Day when black voters vote in Georgia. So it's an attack. What you're bringing up in Texas in your precinct is a nationwide program. It's not just your precinct, Tom. It's the whole game. And so Sam, just remember, you're part of a national attack. Bring everyone you know to the polls. The way to overcome the attack is to overwhelm them with voters.
Yeah, and we really have no other choice right now. Paul in Lucerne, California, you're on the air with Greg Palast.
Hey, I was just wondering, I lost my ballot and I live in California. I know for a fact in my county that my ballot will be counted because I actually am in the party and I know the people that actually will be there. But what about the rest of California?
Okay, well, I can give you the rule in California. You know, California is not part of the rest of America. There is a voting system. So what you can do, and you can go in and everyone in California can go in. If you can't find the ballot that was mailed to you, most Californians vote by mail. You can go into the polling station and fill out an affidavit ballot. If they see that no one else has cast your ballot, that you didn't somehow send it in or fill it out, they will count your vote. So in California, you're okay. Start moving southeast, good luck.
Southeast being?
Southeast America.
Oh,
if you go
yes,
yeah.
New Mexico, Arizona,
Nevada, it's terrible.
Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been, it's really ugly.
Yeah. Mark in San Diego. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Hey, Greg. How we doing?
Hey, Mark.
I'd like to ask Greg, how is it legal, possibly legal, for the Secretary of State, like in Georgia and Kansas, to be in charge of their own election? I mean, that just sounds like Stalinist Russia to me. I mean, it's just absurd. I mean, why can't we have a national entity that oversees these elections instead of just relying on specific pockets of states that are in charge of their own election and then come up with their own rules like a voter ID has to have a street address like in North Dakota. Why can't we do that? And other countries do that.
Right. You know, Mark, great question. Thank you, Greg. Before you answer it, I mean, if you go back and read the debates during the Constitutional Convention,
which you have.
Which I have, yeah.
Of course.
One of the points that was made when they were talking about decentralizing the vote, you know, leaving the states in charge of it, which was the way it was under the Articles of Confederation. Let's just leave it that way. But under the Articles of Confederation, they were essentially sovereign nations, each state was, and it was a trade deal, basically. Was that, yeah, of course there's going to be chicanery, or chicanery, or however you say that word. There's going to be dirty tricks. That always happens. But if the day ever comes that the White House, that the executive branch, which would be in charge of administering any laws Congress passes, including national voter standards, if the White House ever becomes corrupted, they could then corrupt the elections. And it's a strong argument against federal takeover of our elections. I mean, if Donald Trump was in charge of our elections right now, he would put Chris Kobach in charge of that department, and we would have Texas nationwide. On the other hand, we've got this problem where, you know, in California, we've got a great voting system. In Oregon, Washington State, good, clean, nice voting systems work great. And in Texas, you're all screwed up. So what do we do? And what is the law? To Mark's question.
Yeah. Okay, Mark. Number one, it is, while it's kind of legal for Chris Kobach of Kansas, who's running for governor and running the elections, and Brian Kemp running for governor and running the elections in Georgia, and so on, you know, it's been traditional for secretaries of state running for governor to resign. In fact, Jimmy Carter called on Brian Kemp to resign. And, you know, Carter was governor of Georgia. That's where he lives. But, you know, this is not about fairness. This is about power, raw exertion of power. And I do caution about Tom's warning. If we have a national system, that means we have Trump running the national system, and probably, as he said, Chris Kobach, who's his main advisor on fruitcake voting systems, which are, you know, even a commentator, the legal commentator in CNN said Chris Kobach has spent his entire life blocking black voters from voting. So national per se is not the answer. But I will tell you this. I just met with a whole team of lawyers last night here in Portland. That's why I'm here. And they said, let's not forget, as has been forgotten, that the opening of the National Voter Registration Act of '93 says voting is a fundamental right. This is not a preamble. This is part of the law. And we, on a national legal basis, protecting the right to vote means that you can't abuse your authority as Secretary of State to monkey with the election process, which is what Kemp is doing, Kobach is doing, and even their brethren who aren't running for office. The guy in Colorado who removed hundreds of thousands of people from the voter rolls, he's running for re-election as Secretary of State. He's counting his own votes once again. So, yeah, it's ugly. It appears to be legal because, after all, the voting cops, the people that are supposed to protect you, that's the Justice Department's Civil Rights and Voting Rights Division. That's under Jeff Beauregard Sessions, and it's going to get worse when they remove him.
And it's been gutted. And
just gutted.
It's breathtaking. Joyce in Chatsworth, Georgia. Speaking of Georgia, Joyce, you're on the air with Greg Palast.
Hey, Joyce.
Good morning, Greg and Tom. I was checking my voter registration, and living in Georgia, I was curious, so I checked my late husband's voter registration. He died in 2012 before the election. He is still listed as an active voter. Now, I know that if he had gone to vote in the last two elections, he would have gone with me. So, therefore, since I live in one of the whitest counties in Georgia, the use it or lose it apparently doesn't apply to our counties. I'm phone banking this weekend for Stacey Abrams. I've already voted this year, and I try to tell everybody that I can get in contact with, you need to vote. Greg, thank you so much for everything you've done. I've followed you for years.
Well, thank you so much. And maybe I'll see you in Macon when I'm there on Sunday. I'm coming in. By the way, if there's any voters in Georgia and you have been purged from the voter rolls, go to gregpalast.com, contact me, or contact Tom. He'll get a hold of me. But one thing, you mentioned something called use it or lose it. In Georgia and in about 26 states, they're saying if you don't vote in a couple of federal elections, that they can remove you, cancel you from the voter rolls.
And this was empowered, by the way, by John Roberts on the Supreme Court.
Right, in June.
Just in June. But in the case of Ohio. So this is now the law that it's legal for these people to do this. By the way, I meant to ask, has the 93 Voting Rights Act that says voting is a right ever reached the Supreme Court? Has that ever been adjudicated, or is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm trying to do is remind the court, hello, the law says voting is a fundamental right. And the purpose of the NVRA, the Voter Registration Act 93, is it says specifically to extend and protect that right, but to extend the right to vote. Extend it and to more Americans. That's the purpose of the law. And they're using that law to just erase the voter rolls like they're doing in Georgia. Don't miss this election for another reason. In Georgia, you don't vote, you lose your vote. I know it's against the law. It says you can't do that, but they're doing it anyway. So you got to vote just to be allowed to vote.
Not just Georgia. I mean, Ohio, the Supreme Court just said that.
Nevada.
26 Republican-controlled states.
Yep.
Get out and vote if you want to stay on the voting rolls for no other reason. It's 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls from Greg Palast in just a minute.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We will be right back with Greg Palast answering your calls in just a second. And welcome back. Sue in Mountain Home, Arkansas, watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, Sue, you're on the air with Greg and me.
Hi, this is actually Greg, her husband.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I call in, but...
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Greg and Tom. We went voting yesterday, and we were asked for our driver's license, and it's actually on the ballot in Arkansas right now on whether to allow the voting to have a driver's license.
So in other words, to require ID. So does that mean that ID is not required right now in Arkansas, or
I think so,
or that they want to remove that requirement?
Well, when she asked me for my driver's license, and to answer your question, it's to require voter ID. Driver's license, picture ID to vote. Yeah. But when the lady said, I still need to see your driver's license, and she goes, I won't look at the rest of it, just your picture. And she spent time reading the driver's license, and I raised my eyebrows like, wait a minute, you know. And she did it anyways. And do you know anything about that?
Creepy stuff. Thanks, Greg. Greg?
No, I don't. I mean, voting in Arkansas, once again, you've got a state that has been now commandeered by the right wing. And, they're using ID. One of the other problems that we have in America is that at the polling stations, Tom and Greg, is that you have polling workers who are making up their own stuff as they go. And one thing we've found in our studies is that, for example, young black male voters in Ohio are automatically sent to the provisional voting table, like automatically in some precincts. I mean, that's where you go. It's the back of the bus table. And so once again, you have someone making themselves attorney general and adding extra requirements on you. And, the only thing you can do is stand up to it. And the biggest danger, of course, if they say you can't vote or here's a provisional ballot, don't put up with that. Don't take the back of the bus ballot if you can avoid it. But if it's the only way to get your vote in, do that. But try to demand an actual ballot. Now, it sounds like you in the end got to vote, but I'm giving this advice out there to the rest of America. When they hand you that thing called a provisional ballot and say they will count it, no, they won't. At least 1 million provisional ballots were disqualified in the 2016 election. Don't let it happen to you. Demand adjudication. Usually a poll judge is there. Demand adjudication right there that you get the right to vote.
So in other words, you just literally say to the poll worker, I want a poll judge right now, right here.
Yeah, and I know that.
And what if that poll judge says, but I don't see you on the records? I'm sorry, you've been purged from the list.
Then you're kind of stuck. Be firm. Don't be violent. But I can tell you that Santita Jackson, Reverend Jackson's daughter, told me that, she was really firm, and they switched her from a from a provisional ballot to a real ballot. And I've had so many of those stories where it comes down to just being firm. Give me my ballot.
Really?
I deserve a ballot. I want my ballot. Don't give me this nonsense. It ain't true.
My name was purged. I know I vote. Here's my voter registration card. Give me my damn ballot.
Yes, and always bring, I don't care if your state requires it or not, always bring every ID you can think of and something with your address, like your utility bill.
Right, bring a utility bill, a passport, a birth certificate, a driver's license, 3 letters from your friends.
And your mom.
Yeah, right, and a picture of your mom that's signed. Okay, we'll be back with Greg in just a second.